Today is Visakha Puja, the major Buddhist holiday of the year. It's the remembrance of the birth of the Bodhisattva, the enlightenment of the Buddha, and the passing away. So it's a time for celebration and reverence for our teacher. Sattha, the word sattha. In Thai they say sasada, they say sattha in Pali. Sattha deva manusahanam, the teacher of gods and men. Before the Buddha passed away, he considered that we might think that after his passing, that we no longer had a teacher. He said to Ananda that after I passed away, you might think that now we have no teacher. Sure, there might be people who can teach, people who can pass on the Buddha's teaching, but how can we rely on any of them? How can you rely on someone who is not a Buddha? We have no leader. Who will be our leader after you pass away? Devadatta once asked the Buddha, he said, it's time for you to retire. You better let me take over. And the Buddha said, I wouldn't even let Sariputta or Moggallana take over. The Buddha never designated an heir. He never designated someone to take over as the leader. But he said, after I pass away, don't think that you don't have a leader. Don't think that you don't have a sattha, a teacher. And he said to Ananda, yo wo Ananda, maya dhammo cha vinayo cha desito panyato so wo mama chayena sattha. Which means, Ananda, whatever Dhamma and Vinaya has been taught to you by me, has been made clear to you by me. That will be your teacher, that will be your leader after I pass away. The Buddha taught us that his teaching would always be the highest, would always be that which we should look up to. Even the Buddha himself found no one he could worship or revere or hold up as his teacher. Instead, he looked up to the teaching that he had discovered, the truth that he had realized. This is a truth that is lasting, that is a part of nature, the truth of reality. It exists whether a Buddha arises or not, and so the Buddha, even him, he paid respect to it. The Dhamma and the Vinaya, these are the two words the Buddha used. The Vinaya refers to the practice of sila. We find this in the Vinaya Pitaka. The Dhamma refers to the practice of samadhi and panya. So the practice of samadhi, the training in samadhi, we find in the Sutta Pitaka. And the practice, the training in wisdom, we find in the Abhidhamma Pitaka. These are the three trainings of the Buddha that comprise the Dhamma and the Vinaya. And what do these things teach us? What is the instruction? What is the result of practicing Sila, Samadhi, Panya? The practice of Sila is for the purpose of teaching us, training us to overcome what are called the Vitikkamma kilesa. Vitikkamma means they overflow. They show themselves, defilements that show themselves physically or verbally. When we act or speak out of anger or greed or delusion, hurting others, even just acting in a manner that is upset, greedy, attached, clingy, acting in this way, speaking in this way, deluded, speaking out of arrogance or conceit. These are the defilements that arise in the body or speech. So the practice of Sila, when we cultivate a consciousness of ethics, both with rules and precepts, and simply with a restraint, a guarding of the senses, a guarding of our actions and our speech, mindfulness of the body, mindful when we walk, mindful when we talk, mindful of the actions that we perform. And this teaches us about these defilements, and it trains us to free ourselves from defiled actions and defiled speech. The practice and the training of samadhi, when we do walking meditation, sitting meditation, trains us out of the middle grade defilements, or the ordinary defilements that arise in the mind. These are called pariyuttana kilesa, the ones that arise in the mind. Greed that arises in the mind, anger that arises in the mind, delusion, the 5 hindrances, liking, disliking, drowsiness, distraction, doubt. A state of mind that causes suffering, causes stress, that deludes the mind, pollutes the mind, clouds the mind. The practice of mindfulness, of course, frees us from this, gives us clarity of mind, purity of mind. This is a cleansing of the mind. When we say to ourselves, liking, wanting, disliking, confused, worried, doubting, even just walking, right goes thus, left goes, rising, falling, noting pain, noting thoughts, prevent the arising of defilements, creates focus and concentration, and frees our mind from the arisen defilements. But the practice and the training of wisdom is what cuts off the defilements, prevents them from arising. This is called anusaya. Anusaya means something that lies dormant. Even though the defilements might not arise in the mind temporarily, as long as the anusaya, the potential, still exists, as long as these defilements still exist, there's always the potential for the arising of unwholesomeness, even the arising of verbal and physical acts of violence, of harm. So it's the training in wisdom, seeing the nature of reality as laid out in the Abhidhamma, simply seeing the nature of reality, seeing the three characteristics: impermanent, suffering, non-self, anicca, dukkha, anatta, frees us from the potential, the latent defilement, the potential for the arising of defilement. Why? Because the reason these defilements arise is the misunderstanding as stable, satisfying, and self. We see things as such, and so we try to hold on to them, we try to control them, we try to acquire them. But when we see clearly impermanent, suffering, and non-self, we lose this sense of attachment and control, attraction towards engaging and involving in the objects of experience, wanting to acquire, wanting to keep, wanting to fix, wanting to change, wanting to control. We lose that sense. There is no potential for the arising of craving and clinging and attachment, because there is no delusion or misunderstanding that somehow that would bring us happiness, peace, and freedom from suffering. So we train in sila, samadhi, panya, ethics, concentration, wisdom. We train for this reason. This is our teacher. This is the heir to the Buddha that he has left behind for us. On this day we pay homage to the Buddha. We also pay homage to his teaching. Most importantly, we have Patipati Puja. We pay homage through practice. When we practice the teachings of the Buddha, we pay homage to him and his teachings. And we can be considered to be one who is a true heir to the Buddha, one who practices properly and pays proper homage to the Buddha. So now we will continue, as usual, to practice mindful prostration, walking and sitting, to start our day with the practice of the Dhamma.